Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Podcasters Unleashed. It's another Monday. It's 7 p.m. London time and 2 p.m. Eastern time. So, we are here with you guys today, with an interesting episode. Is Afghanistan a lost case? Um, okay, let's go with my co-host. I want them to introduce themselves, and then we're gonna go. I'm gonna say what we're gonna talk about it, and we're gonna go to our questions. Let's go with you, Simon.
Hi, I'm Simon Rushton, and my podcast is Taxi Chronicles. People get in my taxi and they hear what we have to say, or I hear what they have to say. I record their conversation, and it's entertaining, it's sad, it's all different kind of emotions. It's people in London, general from around the world. Over to you, Haola.
Thank you, Simon. So I'm the host of the podcast Women and Stories. I share real stories from real women across the globe. And tune in for a new episode this week. Over to you, Carla.
And I'm Carla. I'm the host of the Wonder and Wellbeing podcast, which is a podcast for parents and teachers and anyone interested in wellbeing and education. Over to you, Victor.
Yeah, hi, hello. I'm Victor Osio. I'm the host of the Diaspora Entrepreneurs podcast, where I speak to entrepreneurs from all walks of life. How we talk about strategies to move from the 9 to 5 towards a lifestyle of freedom. Over to you, Nelson.
And good morning or good afternoon, everyone. This is Nelson J. Zambrano. I am the host of Investing in America, where we talk about how to invest in the United States and also have incredible interviews with entrepreneurs as well. All right. Over to you. Back to you, Matilda.
And I'm the host of Coffee with Matilda, A Journey to Self, and we talk about how to find yourself, how to love yourself, and how to come out of the adversity in life. Okay, today's topic is a very big and huge topic, and if we don't narrow it, we're gonna go for hours and hours of talking. So I rather to give this direction to our co-host and also our audience to know what we're going to talk about today. Is Afghanistan a lost cause? We're going to talk about the exit strategy of America. We're going to talk about why, what's happening to the women and men in Afghanistan and to children in Afghanistan, why men, in my opinion, are fleeing Afghanistan the most. And we're going to slightly talk about the refugee situation, if there is going to be an economical and business problem in the world soon after because of this Afghanistan case. So I think, Simon, you have something to share with us and the audience.
Yes, I do. Thanks to you, Matilda. First of all, I've had a year's tour in Afghanistan. Two tours, and I know I'm not the only military personnel here. We have Nelson. Nelson, how long have you been here? Hello, Nelson.
Yeah, Simon, sorry about that. I had my phone, had the on mute. Simon, the question again was, how long
I've been
here?
in Afghanistan for a year in total after doing 2 tours. You are also a military man. Just give the audience an insight into how long you've been in, let's say, on operations.
Okay, so a quick background on me as far as Afghanistan, Al Qaeda. I'm a 9/11 attack survivor. I was supposed to be at the World Trade Center that day. I just happened to not be there. I wasn't there. The towers went down. I was recalled to active duty, and it was deployed to missions having to do with Al Qaeda. Of course, Al Qaeda is all around the world, but these were generally specific missions against Al Qaeda in Afghanistan and other places. I also served as what's called a foreign area officer, so specialize in military foreign policy at the country level. I served as an intelligence officer, an infantry officer, and in the special operations community.
Thank you, Nelson. So moving along, we're gonna just come up with a short 10-second video to one of Biden's, and he's gonna explain in very brief, why the American military has left Afghanistan, and then one of Hillary Clinton giving us a brief history. So over to that. We'll just go on from here.
The terror threat now in many places, keeping thousands of troops grounded and concentrated in just one country at a cost of billions each year makes little sense to me and to our leaders. We cannot continue the cycle of extending or expanding our military presence in Afghanistan, hoping to create ideal conditions for the withdrawal and expecting a different result. After consulting closely with our allies and partners, with our military leaders and intelligence personnel, with our diplomats and our development experts, with the Congress, the Vice President, as well as with Mr. Ghani and many others around the world, I concluded that it's time to end America's longest war. It's time for American troops to come home.
So we have there President Biden explaining why Americans have come home. It's economics, really. And they're admitting that they can't really get the situation perfect. So instead of wasting more money, wasting more time, let's get the troops home. And now this is a brief history where we're going to hear Hillary Clinton, everybody knows Mr. Clinton's wife, excuse me, and she's going to explain her point of view on Afghanistan.
We had helped to create the problem we're now fighting. How? Because when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, we had this brilliant idea that we were going to come to Pakistan and create a force of mujahideen, equip them with Stinger missiles and everything else to go after the Soviets inside Afghanistan. And we were successful. The Soviets left Afghanistan, and then we said, great, goodbye, leaving these trained people who were fanatical in Afghanistan and Pakistan, leaving them well armed, creating a mess, frankly, that at the time we didn't really recognize. We were just so happy to see the Soviet Union fall, and we thought, okay, fine, we're okay now. Everything's going to be so much better. Now you look back, the people we're fighting today, we were supporting in the fight against the Soviets. So it's not a conspiracy.
So there you have it. For coming from the American hierarchy, reasons of history, and where we are today. So back over to you. Obviously 9/11 comes in within this, but at least everybody's on the same page that we know what we're talking about today. Back to you, Matilda.
Very good. So this question is to Nassim and Simon. So both of you, I would like to answer. And I want to see what you're thinking about it, because as a normal person watching the news, for me, this was a question. U.S. intelligence agencies and President Biden announced that when we withdraw all the troops by September 11, Afghan defense forces will be able to hold the Taliban for 2 to 3 years. And then turns out to be 2 to 3 days. Is it possible that the American intelligence agencies were misinformed, or they're just lying to us? So I just want to understand what's happening here. Nassim, tell us about it, since you have a direct history of working there as well.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that they were lying. Okay. I mean, you got to take a look at the Afghan military, right? The Afghan military was expected to do something that most militaries couldn't do. Okay. They were modeled after the U.S. military, U.S. Army, which has this huge infrastructure status, right? And when the U.S. pulled out and NATO, when all of that pulled out and all that infrastructure pulled out, it seems as if the Afghans, they also basically lost heart. So when the backbone pulled out, they quickly collapsed and folded. So that's what it seems. Now, another thing that happened too is very important to take into account. The peace treaty that was signed with the Taliban expressly forbade NATO or ISAF and the United States from conducting combat operations. So the Taliban could run roughshod all over the country. So the U.S. and NATO could not go after the Taliban. So they had a good 7, 8, 9 months where they could do what they wanted. and NATO couldn't do anything. U.S. couldn't do anything. And on top of that, the majority, another thing about the peace treaty is that the combat troops had to leave, which makes no sense to me, had to leave first. So when you saw all those things happening and those dramatic scenes, it had gone to something like 13, 14, 15,000 combat troops to 2,500, which meant Taliban had a free reign.
Wow.
So, okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Nelson. What about you, Simon? What do you think?
I can't say I really disagree with Nelson there. I believe that I would certainly not call the Afghan army cowards, and I would certainly, because I've worked with them before, and they have their way of dealing with things. It's not conventional warfare. It's a bit like you could go back to 1775 when the Americans were fighting the British. They had their own style. It wasn't necessarily as formed because they weren't structured yet. As rolling on now, they're structured. But I know that in the sense of, based on what I heard from Vice News today, that the Afghan army were, and there's like an elite section where the CIA have trained them. It's about 1,000 of them. And they're going to do that long, what I believe the Americans call it the Alamo. They're going to do the Alamo stand and all that. And they got an order from up top. No, everyone go to the airport. And they was all told to leave their weapons and get on the plane. And they've been taken wherever they've been taken, maybe to Qatar or somewhere, to maybe fight another day. I don't know, but they've been taken, and this is what Vice News was saying. So it's very interesting. But if you can go into further details, there's a lot of history to go. There's the underlying scenes or underlying goings on within this. But before I get into that, I think I'll just let other people have a say on what they feel. But Afghanistan holds a lot of natural resources. It has a big pipeline that's meant to be going through, and in relationship to natural resources, if I share you on here, this slide here, it's got iron, it's got copper, it's got cobalt, it's got gold, it's got lots and lots and lots of different natural resources that we as a business, as a country, because war is business at the end of the day, would be interested in. And then if you come in on further, you hear here where they're talking about a pipeline that's going to go from Turkestan through Pakistan, through Afghanistan, and through India, which is quite interesting because this has been talked about since 1990 during the Taliban occupation. Now, the story goes, and I say story because obviously you always get a story with the facts, that originally the Taliban said, yes, okay to the pipeline. And then in their infinite wisdom, they decided it's haram. And no, you can't have your pipeline. And there's a bit of upset. There's an American company that no longer have the contract for the pipeline, but it's a bit confusion where they were brought out by another company, and there's talk about some company being able to put this pipeline in place. But when you mix in natural resources and big business, you can understand why you may not want that confliction. But back to you, Matilda.
Very good. I want to ask the audience as well, so they can get busy in this topic. Why do you think America exited the way that it exited? Let me see what you guys think about it. I want to come back again to Nelson and Simon. Sorry, my other co-hosts, because they had history in military and in Afghanistan. So for me, it's interesting how their take about this subject. Okay, 20 years in Afghanistan and $90 billion plus spent on training Afghani troops. How is this possible that we trained people that they cannot even fight their own fight? What happened to that $90 billion? Nelson?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, right, there's just like Simon was talking to right now, there's different sections, different parts of Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a country for us, but within Afghanistan, there's different tribes and sects and groups. So there's not a whole of nation. We, United States, NATO, tried to implement a whole of nation approach, but it's really a series of tribes. You could have a person who speaks Urdu, Punjabi, and they have nothing in common with someone who speaks Hindi, right? The opposite extremes. So that's the first part, right? So you have these very relatively small elite units that are very good, but then the big chunk of the Afghan army, I mean, I would have to say they just weren't up to the cause. And I would say we try to model them after our military versus setting up something that was set up to fight a guerrilla war, right? Like a counterinsurgency battalions in Colombia. So these counterinsurgency battalions in Colombia, they travel all over Colombia fighting the FARC. And we tried to set up more something high tech in Afghanistan, which was not set up for something more high tech. And
So
when we pulled out, once again, we were the architect and backbone of that. Okay, so when we weren't there to provide a backbone to them, it seems to have collapsed.
So are you, Nelson, are you saying that 20 years, Americans and NATO, 20 years there, and they failed to understand the morals, mentality, and the ability of the people that they were trying to train?
I would say we, and again, I don't know, but we saw a method that works for us, okay, and we look to supplant that method on someone else. Now, other places we've used a different methodology, and I always use Colombia as the example. The Colombian method, it was set up, give them our way of doing things, but adapted to them. So Afghanistan was a little bit different. Okay. Because in Afghanistan, okay, so let's take a further step back. You got two types of missions, right? One mission is what's called a counterinsurgency, which basically means you got to build a nation. You got to build them up from the ground up. The other one is a counterterrorism. We were doing a counterinsurgency mission in Afghanistan, which is literally building them from the ground up. Okay, so two totally different approaches.
And to add to that, Matilda, thank you, Nelson. You're trying to teach people things in a war zone. You're trying to do infrastructure in a war zone. You're trying to tell people to believe in, I'll give you an example. I was in Helmand. No, I was in Kandahar, sorry. Kandahar's a province in Afghanistan. I was talking to one of the locals. I said, have you ever been to Helmand? He said, no. But obviously in his accent, yeah, I can't do his accent. And he says, I don't go to Helmand. They're not my people. Yeah, they're drug lords and bum boys, was his terminology. Yeah, and things like that. And he's got no interest. He said, Kandahar is my people. This is where I stay. This is where I fight. If he's got a problem, do you see what I mean? So back to what Nelson was saying. Afghanistan's Afghanistan because somebody called it Afghanistan and it wasn't them. They go by their tribe, they go by their warlord, their drug lord, their clan, all those things come in. And I was speaking to people in Helmand district and they say, what are you talking about Afghanistan? He said, or Pakistan. We just go over to see our cousins because what it is, they migrate from Afghanistan, which is the southern part of Helmand, into Pakistan because it gets too cold. And I know it gets cold, so I was there, minus 55 in the mountains. They go to the southern, northern part of Pakistan because it's hotter in the winter, so they don't freeze to death. But they don't see that they're going to another country. They're going to see their cousins.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's a whole different mindset. And if you can't work with the fact that they don't want to have one government ruling them all, they're happy having their different regions. But you could say big business doesn't care about that because big business wants the pipeline. And if you want a pipeline thing, so I would argue, it could be argued, you could say, was this a success? If I'm big business, and there's a pipeline going, I'm making money, it was a success. If I'm the foot soldier who's got PTSD and been blown up and seen his friends being evaporated, it's not a success. If I'm the Afghan that believed in what America told me, and I risked my life and limb to be an interpreter, and now they've left me and my family here, I'm going to be very upset. And I'm probably, either if I don't die, I may become a terrorist at the people who've left me, who've lied to me, because their culture is a big honor thing. So I would argue that America has a very small window to try and even put, or be seen to put this right, before they're going to have more problems. And it's going back to that video what Hillary Clinton says.
So you believe there is we can do a damage control at this time?
Yeah, of course. You remember they've got to get all the Brits. They've got to get. We still got 750 British troops there as well. So we're not in as depth as America, but America always takes the limelight, being the Hollywood nation, and and you know, we got to get our 750 out. They got to get their how many thousands out, and you could easily send planes enough to get the people out who you need to get out, because they haven't who was working for who.
Simon Nelson, is it like now the Taliban have taken over, so it's a no-go area for NATO troops or for evacuation? Is it like the country's locked down that they can't even take out their own people, their allies that are local?
Okay. In answer to your question, so we've got a comment from Sasha there. I'll just rediscuss it. Sasha, hi, nice to have you back. Mining with Afghans, ? Good luck. No roots, no infrastructure, only friendly Afghans with a war culture, not ready to work for big international companies. Well, that is a bit of
that little fact gets in the way of of a lot of theories. That little bitty fact gets in the way.
Okay. Says, where's he from? Iran? Is he from Iran? Yeah. Where's Sasha from? I don't know. But my point is that is a bit of a every country's got infrastructure, and I've seen Afghans working. So sorry, Sasha, with your stereotypical comments. Afghans do work, just like any country. You've got some people who don't want to work and some people who do want to work. But they have infrastructure. They had infrastructure before America was there, before Russia was there. So, but sorry, I've just lost my trace.
Sasha is from France, so
yeah, but he's not heritage. Is not France, is it? Okay.
Armenian French.
But his accent is okay. He's got a French accent, and that's
okay. Yeah, that makes all the difference.
Okay. He's got a French accent.
So I know, yeah, he's Armenian from France. So that's what it is.
Okay, so let's go back, I think, to Victor's question. Victor, could you just repeat the question, please? Make sure we get it answered.
Yeah, because when you guys are saying it's like, I don't think it's a lost cause, because this is my question. Is it that when the Taliban took over last week, all previous agreements were shut down? The US, the UK, the Western troops, they can't evacuate the troops out of people that relied on them. They can't evacuate them out. Is it like that?
Well, to answer that question is this. Based on what I've been researching for the last couple of days, the Americans have an agreement, as we know, with the Taliban, and they're not going to get into, let's say, fisticuffs. They're not going to get into any shootouts. But the Northern Alliance, the Afghan army, weren't involved in that. They didn't want to come to the table. So if you say if the Americans say they're leaving and they're not going to have it, you don't shoot at me, I don't shoot at you, the Taliban can move in. Because the only people they're going to have a problem with, as the Taliban leader said today, the spokesman in Qatar, we're coming for the Afghan army because they weren't at the speak. So we still have a problem with them. That's what we're trying to blow them up and sort out all these issues. But really, it's a power grab, isn't it? The main drug dealers left, excuse the term, in reference to, and now everybody wants to be the kingpin, the drug lord. So they've stepped in, Taliban's come in and stepped in. Now, everybody who bet on the wrong horse, and I'm sorry to say this, you betting on Americans staying there forever, that's the wrong horse because they're gone. Now you either go with them or you get your head cut off. Very simple. Very, very simple. Should have thought of that before you made your decision. You could have been like Switzerland and just said, I want nothing with none of you, but you took a side. And that's the way it is, the long and short of it, if you see what I mean. I'm not sure what Nelson would have to say to that.
Well, I mean, there's two questions. There's what you said and then what Victor. So, Victor, again, your question is if you could just rephrase that, please.
Okay, again, is it that Americans cannot, is it that America or the West cannot go back to continue evacuation of their people, their personnel there, including their allies? Is it that it's the block? Is it that it is blocked? There's no way of going there.
No, they can. They can. Sorry, I should have explained that clearly then. My apologies. They can. They can get out.
Simon, you know Nelson is old, so maybe he would want me to repeat the question again and again and again. Yeah. Allow Nelson to just answer the question. Because,
okay, go on, Nelson.
You know.
Well, you see, I guess Nelson is old enough to know when other people go off track from the question that was asked. So, and from the person who asked the question who wasn't tracking his own question. So, having said that, no, the evacuations, as far as I can tell, are continuing. Evacuations, I can tell, are continuing. There's just a backlog. Obviously, there's people all over the place. There's confusion. Why? I mean, I'll tell you right now. I'm sure that there's two different groups of Taliban. One that wants to go settle some scores, and the other one that's like, we want you guys to leave as soon as possible. So, you know, you have to mix that into the mix. You have a bunch of people, interpreters, they have to get their visas in order. There was a special immigration visa. They even posted something about that. So you have all of that taking place. You've got confusion there. So there's all of that. At the same time, the Taliban have a big job in their house. Now they're into the business of governance, right? The whole world is watching them. They're watching how they're going to handle it, what they're going to do, right? Okay. They don't want to mess up either. They're at the world stage. They have everything. They have everything to lose and nothing to gain if they mess it up.
What do they got to lose?
What do they have to lose?
They've already said they're coming back with Shia law. What have they got to lose?
Okay, I mean, I'll tell you what they have to lose their legitimacy. Okay,
they
right now.
They don't care about that, Nelson.
They care huge about that.
No, Nelson. They're there. They have a saying. You have to watch, we have the time. And their saying has been proven. That's why America, everybody's leaving. They're there because they're going to be there regardless. And they're going to rule and they're going to do their way. They've got nothing to lose. And they're going to do it their way. If you watch these recent documentaries in the last 6 days, that's what they're saying. We're going to do what we do. The Americans are going to leave. And then we're going to go and find these people. And we're finding them already and knowing where they live. But as soon as Americans leave, bam, back to the old school.
Yeah,
but they did say they let girls go to school.
Right. As soon as the Americans leave, okay, that can be stretched out. Second thing, the Taliban want to make good with Russia, with China, with Iran, with Pakistan. Okay, they need allies. They've already
been good with them. They've been getting weapons. Who do you think's been giving them weapons? China and Russia.
But now, again,
they've been doing the revenge thing that you lot did to them in Mujahideen days.
Right. So now they got to actually learn how to run a government. Okay.
They were running the country between after the Russians left up until 2001.
Yeah.
And that's now, like 30 years, Nelson.
Right, Simon. And now they're getting a government. They're getting a country that's advanced a little bit more in the last 20 years.
How's it advanced?
Well, you just mentioned about girls going to school.
No, they said that one thing. They said that girls can go to school, but as long as it's within the Quran.
Right.
The Shia thing. Okay. That was it. And that's Simon, the minor. That's a minor.
I would venture to tell you that there's two Taliban right now, and those two Taliban. It's not just one single Taliban. There's like two different groups of Taliban, and they've got to somehow figure out which way do we want to go? No different than Iran. It's not all just
Where are you
one
getting
Taliban.
this from, Nelson?
Huh?
Where are you? Is this your opinion or is this fact?
This is
I'm
fact,
interested to
Simon.
know. How? I'd like to know. Consider I spent quite a bit of time there. I'd like to know. I've been doing my research slightly.
Well, Simon, I would tell you that when you got to do research, it's not just I'm going to do research into things that I already know and I want to continue it to be what I like. It's got to be something totally against that research.
Where did you get to know this from?
Okay, I'll break it down for you. Okay, as a foreign area officer, the American that the Taliban had captured, they had captured American. This one American, right? There was one group of Taliban that said, "We got to kill this guy. We hate all Americans." There was another group of Taliban that said, "We need to give this American back to them. The longer we keep them, the longer they stay here." Okay, there's all Taliban.
Okay,
two totally different camps within a Taliban. Okay, two totally different camps within the Taliban. That's an example right there.
How long? Is that a recent example or example somewhere longer down the line?
Say again?
Is that a recent example? Is that something in relation to them leaving now, or is that something that happened ages ago?
Well, that was what, 3-4 years ago.
Okay. So what we're talking about now is a current affair, and
right,
I'm not trying to knock you down here.
No,
I'm just saying I disagree with you on this point. Other things I've agreed with you, so on this thing, because they know the man, even the warlord man, he said, "Listen, my commands come from up top." So we've been told the only people we kill is the ANA, the Afghan army,
right?
Or Northern Alliance, the old remnants. Yeah, the Americans we don't have no problem with. Do you understand?
Yeah, because that was
and he did say we're not coming with the old kind of way of doing things, but we are going to still implement the Sharia law. Now this is the Taliban guy himself talking.
Right. But within that same group, that's all Sharia law, there's different camps.
Yeah, okay. People always going to have different mindsets, just like we're on podcasts with Unleashing. You look at things one way and I look at things another. But what I'm saying overall, you've got the spokesman, and what the spokesman says comes from the top. What comes from the top goes.
Yeah. But Simon, even within the top, there's two different camps. There's two totally different camps. Maybe not that different, but there's different camps. Again, I go back to that U.S. soldier. One group is like, we got to kill this guy. We hate him. We make a video cutting his head off. And the other group is like, treat him right and give him back. Negotiate and give him back alive. Because if you kill him, yeah, we'll feel great and more Americans will show up. The other camp said, give him back and the quicker they leave. That's top leadership camps talking amongst themselves. Finally, what happened? They gave him back. They said, the longer you keep them, the longer they stay.
Well, I can't see how American military would stay that much longer for one officer, considering you've got such a big military.
Okay, I'm going to ask this question from Nelson. Nelson, do you think we can do a damage control at this time or no?
Sorry, just before that, we've got another post.
Ruchi Wakanda.
Thank you. Says hello, everybody. Back to you, Matilda and Nelson. Sorry.
Can we do a damage control, Nelson?
Well, the first thing I want to say is hi to the person, Ruchi, whose last name is Wakanda. I can actually say now Wakanda forever and say it with a straight face. So, Ruchi, a pleasure to meet you. Matilda, I guess the first thing you got to ask yourself is, what would damage control look like? What would damage control be? Right? I mean, that's the first question you got to ask. What is damage control? Is damage control staying in Afghanistan? Is damage control leaving Afghanistan? You see, we got to define what is damage control. So that's
if we are leaving Afghanistan,
say again?
If we're leaving Afghanistan, which we are, which America is, how can they damage control the situation?
Yeah, and again, I go back to what do we consider what damage control is, right? I mean, what is damage control?
We left the country worse than actually we took the country.
Well, I would disagree with that, okay, that we left it worse than when we took it. If you look at how much infrastructure has grown up in Afghanistan, okay, the rights of people, the Taliban
blew everything up. Every road I've been on that they laid, it was very nice, had been blown up. Most of the buildings have been blown up. if not by the Taliban, by the Americans, and
Mhm.
schools were all gone. And the few schools are still remaining, the Taliban got the credit for building them, even though it's Americans.
Okay, there you go. So you said it yourself. The
Well,
Taliban
that's
got the
not a
credit
good
for
thing.
building a
If
school.
the Taliban get the credit, that's not what you want.
Well, it's not what you want, but it's what you got. And Simon, then I got to ask you the question: where are you getting that information from?
There's a document, American. I'll tell you. I'll show you here, mate. Here you are. Bear with me 1 second. That's the document. It's an American document, and it goes to White House, to your White House, and they discuss it. And there's a 2014 version document, excuse me, where they discuss about that same thing. And they said there's actually 7.8 billion dollars spent on reconstruction in Afghanistan out of the
Simon. Yeah, just to top that up, it's 30 billion on reconstruction.
Well, it says from that document there, it says 7.8, because remember, there's how much the war cost as a whole, and how much was spent.
Yeah, it costs 1.4 trillion or more than that.
Okay, and then you've got $7.8 billion was meant to be spent on the reconstruction, but what actually was spent on
Matilda, are we okay?
Yeah. So I want to ask Kaula this question. Kaula and Carla are very quiet. I want to bring them back to the show. We cannot leave the women behind. We want to see, Kaula, you've lived in different countries, and some of them you've seen war. I want to bring your point of view, and we see. I mean, I'm watching CNN. I'm watching BBC. I don't know, Al Jazeera. And most of them are showing men fleeing the country, Afghan men fleeing the country. How does that make you feel? As a woman, as someone that's seen war, I'm sure that you've seen situation like this before. How do you feel it? And do you feel there's a difference between cultures and what's happening here in Afghanistan?
Well, I do feel that the worst thing is. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
Okay. So actually, it's undeniable because women often face the most difficult and traumatic experience during this kind of conflicts. Not only in Afghanistan, in a lot of countries, when there is a conflict, women are the first victims. And what's happening now in Afghanistan is women really are the first victims for Taliban. And when you see a lot of countless Afghan men, they are fleeing the country, seeking for work and safety, and a lot of women are left behind because in their own meaning that maybe women would be much safer if they are in Afghanistan, because if you want to go to the airport, you have 15 checkpoints to go to the airport, and they check you out. So actually it's also dangerous for a woman without male protection to go to the airport by herself. To go out from the house to go to the airport is a real struggle. It's a war to go through. So we don't see the whole story because we see everything from the media and we see the images. So we don't see the whole story of how they can go to the airport or how they are the women if they are protected or not. And that is the consequences of the war, because women are vulnerable and they are left with families, they are left with kids at the young age, and they face a very difficult traumatic experience. And yes, we are not equal as men, and we need more security, we need more protection. And I wonder, where are these feminist people? Where are these human rights protection feminist people around the world? They don't speak about this, which is very absurd for me. And also, we don't see the other side of the story. When the refugees are going to these countries in France, Europe, or USA, where they are going, we don't know. We just see that they are taking the airplane and that's it. So the story is not really ended here.
Okay, I want to ask the audience.
So, a comment, Matilda.
Yeah.
Sorry. Akaram Ram says, "Who does not know the true history of Islam cannot understand the secrets of the Afghan victory." I personally would like you to explain that sentence, please, and especially the part of victory, because it seems quite interesting. I'm sure even Nelson's going to agree with you, or I'm going to disagree, or one of the two. Something's going to happen. But anyway, back to you, Matilda.
Well, I want to ask the audience, what do you think?
I'll tell you right now.
To the women and children.
I mean, we negotiated a bad treaty, so I guess that's part of the secret of the Afghan victory. We on the U.S. side, I was probably not the best treaty to be negotiated. So you know what, that's something good to bring in. It wasn't a good treaty. In that treaty, the Afghan government was pressured to release 5,000 Taliban that were in jail. U.S. and NATO combat troops could not conduct offensive operations against the Taliban. The U.S. troops and NATO had to leave. So all of those things put handcuffs on the present administration, on the present, which is obviously President Joe Biden. He had to agree and abide by those rules. So you have those handcuffs. Usually the people will ask, well, why doesn't he do this? Why? Because you cannot break your own treaty, especially the United States. Because once you break your own treaty, your own word, especially as a president, how does that help you down the road? It doesn't. So take, for example, Iran. We unilaterally, under the last administration, threw out the Iranian nuclear treaty, right? Guess what? Now Iran can say, we're going to go build a nuke. Your word can't be trusted. Every other country can say, your word can't be trusted. You backpedal, you retrade on your own deals. So we have to abide by that. And what would we get out of it of staying there? It's just fighting another 6 months. Okay? So there's that. Okay. Matilda.
Okay, I want to ask Sasha, I want to ask Ruchi, I want to ask Akram and other audience that are listening, and also Carla here. Can other nation make a country to care about their children and women?
I think when you ask that question, Matilda, you assume that they don't. By the way it's phrased, it's that you're saying that you're saying other, as in not us, don't care about their women and children. But who told you they don't care about their women and children?
No, but that's how it shows. Most of the men are fleeing the country. In other countries, when you see there is a war happening, you allow the women and children to flee first.
Okay, but we don't know, Matilda, that hasn't happened. We haven't seen everything that's happened. We've seen what selected people who have been taking video footage and photographs and releasing them have chosen to show us. We don't know the full story about what's going on. And I think we have a tendency in the West to assume that everything that we're shown on the television and in the media is true and 100% accurate and showing a holistic picture of the truth from all sides. And that's just not the case. I think we know that there are always agendas, exactly as we will say that the Taliban have their agenda. The Western media, the CNN, the BBC, whoever also have their agenda. And it's been a long, long time since the media has been showing the whole story for the benefit of all of humanity. So I don't think that we can make those kind of statements and say that they don't care about their women and their children because we see lots of men. There are some issues as well with filming women, because obviously the country has the particular value system that it has based on keeping women out of the media, for example. They're not going to be showing lots of footage of women and children going anywhere, because that's going to be restricted, isn't it? But that doesn't mean that they're not escaping. That doesn't mean that they're not being treated well in some situation. As Nelson said earlier, you have two different systems operating there. So you have what we call extremism. And you have extremism here, by the way. You have extremism in the West. It's not just exclusive to the East or exclusive to the Taliban. We have extreme Western ideologies as well, which are no more helpful in the world than any other extremism. But then you also have a lot of humanitarianism, you have a lot of justice, you have a lot of fairness, and you have a lot of systems based on values. We may not see them as values, but to them, they are values. So I think we have to be careful when we say those sorts of statements, because we're not sure entirely that that's the reality. And yes, I know there's some history and there are some high profile cases where we've seen women have been abused and women have been treated badly by the Taliban and, you know, had their rights, what we call their rights, taken away or abused. But that happens everywhere. That happens here. I was born in the United Kingdom, and you can have your rights abused here as a woman too. It's not something that just happens in countries of them, the others, you know?
And just to add to that, 6.2 million women and children, Afghan women and children, were actually removed or left before the Americans, I shouldn't say Americans, allies got there. Because if you know a war's coming, you don't leave the most precious things. You can send them on the way, and then the men make their way later on. The news clips I've seen so far, obviously not including BBC or CNN, the more independent ones where the journalists, I've seen women running with children. And look at that clip. You posted it the other day, where the American soldiers grabbing a child, Afghan child, and then bringing a woman over the wall. All the men are standing down below waiting their turn, but the woman and the child's going first. So it's a prime example. But back to you.
But Simon, children and women are the representative of the future of that culture. So I think they should be treated very carefully and very delicately. I see a cultural difference with me being Armenian. In Armenia, men first of all, they fight. I mean, we saw that the last war. They even the regular men is standing up because they want to fight for their mothers, fight for their daughters, fight for their wives. So it's a very big cultural difference that I see as an Armenian that was seen a couple of months ago. How men were saying, "I need to die for my mom. I need to give my life for my country, for my flag." So it's a little bit different here.
So, Matilda, if I may, so just to kind of clarify, first of all, and this goes back into what Simon's saying and Carla, you know, when we look at a picture, right, we say, oh, those men are trying to leave. First of all, we don't know if their wives have left, if their families have left. We don't know. We don't know if all of those guys are interpreters, okay? And those interpreters fight, okay? Except if they're in a base, you know, with some colonel. But if interpreter goes out to the field with an infantry unit, a combat arms unit, those interpreters fight. And they know that they're marked men for death, okay? So let's understand that. So we don't know. Second thing is this is a short amount of time to get a lot of information out. Very short amount of time to get a lot of information out. And so that makes a big difference. As far as Armenia, and this goes back to what Simon was saying before, tribes. Armenia sees itself as a country. I'm sure they only speak one language in Armenia, one religion in Armenia. You see what I mean? So it's Armenia. They see themselves as Armenians. Afghanistan, they do not see themselves as Afghans. I think it would be a big difference if somebody said, hey, they're going to attack this tribe of this region or this other tribe. That's a whole different story. You know, even to the point where there was an American, and even made a movie about it, Marcus Luttrell, where this American, his unit had gotten wiped out, and he made his way to a village of one tribe. And there, God, I cannot remember the name of something Afghans have where they have to give refuge and protect someone who is under duress. And they protected him. Why? Because he was now part of their tribe. And they were going to fight against Taliban who wanted him. So, again, you got to look at it from that cultural norm, through that cultural lens. There was an Afghan village who was going to protect an American and fight against Taliban because he was not part of that tribe.
Interesting. Carla, I think you want to read a comment and answer a comment.
Yeah, we had a couple of comments come in from Akram, which I think they're related. They're very much related, and we should acknowledge them. So Akram Imar says we must differentiate between the principles of Islam and the practices of Muslims, as in the case of all monotheistic religions. And I think this is really important. And he said in an earlier comment as well that he who does not know the true history of Islam cannot understand the secrets of the Afghan victory. And I think these two comments are really important to bring out, because I think we're at a stage when we look at this situation that's going on with Afghanistan, we're at a stage where maybe we need to go back to some discussions as human beings, as a collective, as to what we fight for, what value systems underpin our behavior and what our actions are all about. Because we still see this kind of narrative of the anti-Islamic, the other. It's us versus them, and our civilization and our way of doing things is better. And those people over there, you know, are terrorists, and their principles and value system is not right. And we have to go to their country to fix it. But all of the countries around the world, all the different civilizations have had systems established for a long time before the Western governments were there, before the Americans were there, before the Brits were there. And they know how to run things. They know how to run their own countries. They know what to build good countries and good systems on. But because things have been failing doesn't mean that we need to go into their countries and fix things, or we need to impose our way on them. But then there's also this aspect of religion. The Western countries may quite often seem to forget this, but they propose to be Christian nations. The Americans, Brits, all of these countries. I grew up in Britain, and it's a Christian nation. And a lot of the things that we see British people doing are not Christian, and they haven't been Christian for a long time. So what makes us think from British perspective or American perspective that everything we see coming from Islamic countries or Islamic nations is Muslim? It isn't. It's people, it's people's human nature. And we have to stop this narrative of the Western countries are civilized and have democracy and have peace, and we're going to these countries to make peace, and these other nations are warmongers and terrorists and all of that. We have terrorists here. I grew up in the UK where the IRA was bombing left, right, and center over here in the UK, and we seem to have forgotten that. We have terrorists running around in London with knives stabbing each other, and they're 15 years old. It's human nature that makes people do those things. It's not their religions or the principles that underpin their religion. So I think we have to also have more recognition of the positive values from Islamic countries. If they were following Islam and the principles of Islam, we wouldn't have those kinds of issues. So I think we also have to bring that up. And
Very good, Carla.
Such a strong comment. It says Afghans won the war. It's just a fact. Back to you, Matilda.
Yeah, I think.
Bring Victor to you. Actually, do you have something to say, or I'm
yeah, I have something to say, which is in line with what Akram said and what Sasha is saying now. Pure and simple. The Afghans, they won the war. Whether you call them Taliban, whether you call them whatever name you call them, they won the war. The troops that came in, they left, allowing them to take control of their own sovereign nation. So either way you want to try to spin it, see, sometimes I say democracy is messed up. Because we all, like what Carla said, we have ways and systems of running our own nation. So maybe this is just to show other nations how to deal with people who wants to come, outside forces who wants to come and impose new ways of life. Take this counterinsurgency operation, for God's sake. You want to go into another country and start telling them how to dress up, how to like. All you have to do is, if it's the war on terror, like was earlier stated, 9/11 war on terror, fine, fair enough. Go there, boom, 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 do what you want to do, and you back out, but not try to change the system. See, they waited. How many years now?
20 years.
Billions of dollars lost. gone. You get it? Who actually won this war? The Afghan people and the big contractors, big businesses. They won the war, not the everyday guy not the guy next door whose son is in Afghan, came back with a missing limb. He didn't win the war, but the big business, the big corporations who were taking $500 billion contracts on
KBR.
as financing. No, see, they are financing debts for the next 30 years. It's going to come up to $500 billion, and it's a loan. Who is actually benefiting from that? These are the people benefiting from the war, but not the ordinary people, not the Allied forces, not the Afghan citizens. No, the people who won the war, to me, is the Afghans and also the big businesses.
Okay. Great. Carla, what do you want to say?
Just a comment from Sasha. The military industry won the war, so that's backing up what Victor's saying. I will say this quickly. It's the third time now that Britain's been kicked out of Afghanistan, so it's nothing new on our part. It was in 1839, 1887, and 2001. We've been kicked out, and I don't know why Tony Blair didn't realise we weren't going to win. Yeah.
No, he was standing. See, Tony Blair was standing shoulder to shoulder with his man, which is fair enough. I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with him.
Nelson.
Okay, Carla, what do you want to say?
Actually, it's important to go back into history and see in the 60s and before how Afghanistan was very modern. Actually, if you see even Queen Humayra, she didn't appear with a veil, and the king was opening the country to the world. There was no segregation between men and women, and in 1964, women got their right to vote. And everyone was going to school and universities, and there was no such deteriorating and a lot of struggle that we see now in this country. So really just to understand what has happened from that day to now, that's important to know the history. And when the Taliban or they call it as Islamic State, that has nothing to do with religion. They came and they placed Islam in a very narrow road, and they split this into right and left, Islamic and communist, and that's how it transformed Afghanistan. But we really need to see before how Afghanistan was very developed, and now it's deteriorating, even with the American troops and the American wants to export its democracy. I don't think it's
very true, Carla. Thank you for sharing. It is very true. I mean, we have some pictures. I don't know if you can show it or not. We have some pictures of Afghanistan in 60s, which is fascinating, like modern woman. I wanna bring back Victor here. Victor, based on your expertise in finding jobs and business, as what we can see is right now thousands of people, because of this recent event, thousands of Afghanis gonna be displaced in America or around the world. Months to come, years to come, that are gonna be millions. What will happen to the economy of the world? Do you think by having more refugees, the economy of a country will be better or worse? Can we create new jobs for them?
Okay. Yeah, I think the economy of the world depends on where they are going to. So if they're going to, definitely the main target is the West. So the Allies will take them in, Europe, the US will take them in, Canada will take them in. So, but when it comes to job, I think they will still need to go through the process of their host country. You get, while those going in for reconstruction, which is the Chinese, the Pakistanis, the Russians, they're going in for massive construction jobs. So the ones that are there, I believe, I know Afghanistanis, they are very educated bunch. I met a doctor or two who are from Afghan, and they are quite, their level of intelligence is very, very, is very, very up there, and their professionalism is great. But coming in as a refugee is a different status entirely, where you have to come from the camps and into the job center. If you take the UK, for example, if you take London, for example, from the camp to the job center and start looking for jobs. One, the language, from speaking the native language now to speak English. The jobs, if you are, say, you are an accountant in Afghanistan and you are in London right now as a refugee, see, it's the cleaning job that is waiting for you. It's pure labor that's waiting for you. Construction, see, that is what is waiting for you. But as time goes on, the next generation will definitely strive, and those who can adapt fast, they will be able to get out of this whole economic situation as soon as possible.
I love that you said the ones that can adapt fast. That's actually very key point in any situation to survive and to be successful. Nelson, what is your?
Yeah, so two things. One is going online with the question asked to Victor. What's going to be a big determining factor is what skill sets do they bring, right? What skill sets do they bring to the table? That helps, being able to how well you land, and is there a community to help you out, right? To help you navigate. The second thing is how flexible. So I would venture to say most of the people leaving Afghanistan, they speak English. They have a good command of the English language. They're used to the Western way of doing things, so they're going to have a leg up on most other refugees. It's not
Nelson,
yeah.
until you come into the corporate environment in the UK, then you know that your English is different.
America is different though, and it depends on the jobs you're
So
getting.
so it's not about how well you speak English in your local setting, but when you come to these parts, you find that your English, your accent, everything is different. So it actually affects your confidence, the type of jobs that you go to.
Right, and I would venture to say most of those refugees are probably going to come to the United States. Okay. So a lot of those refugees, why? Because they're the interpreters for U.S. companies, U.S. units.
How many of them?
A big chunk. I mean, we were the largest. We were the largest contingent. So
is it 1 million?
I don't know. We're gonna have to ask Simon, the Google expert, right? Ask him that question. But at the end of the day, what's important is that countries are going to be accepting the people who can quickly acclimate and have a reason for leaving. Like hey, we worked with the Americans. I was an interpreter. We did this. Those get priority. Those go to the front of the line. And,
so for those who were not interpreters, what happens to them?
All right, we're looking at 2.5 million registered Afghan refugees. And what we're saying is 484,000 in 2021. Sorry. Oh, my eyesight's terrible. But anyway, you want 2.5 million refugees.
Okay, so the bottom line is to me, I'm talking about the ones that are with the special immigration visa. Okay, those are the ones that will be relocated in the United States. Those are the ones that have a good command of the English language. So there. And yes, The Man Who Wanted to Be King. I saw that movie. Yeah. Great movie.
So following on from Nelson, Sasha says The Man Who Wanted to Be King. Great movie to watch. The Michael Caine and Sean Connery in Afghanistan. One of my favorite. I assume everybody saw the picture of Afghan, how it used to be in the 60s. Very, very modern. I'll just give you a glimpse now. If you see the women in short skirts past their knees, which is against Christianity in many churches, and the guys with short haircuts, no big beards, infrastructure, a bus service, Nelson, library, and a lot more, and even swimming pool, beaches, and then
beaches.
Beaches. Well, when I say a beach, I mean there's a guy by a swimming pool further down. See, there you are. He's on the beach, if you see him there. But anyway,
Very
back
good.
over
Thank
to
you,
you,
Simon.
Matilda.
Carla, I mean, actually, we need to end the show, but I want to ask Carla the last question, since this is going to be for the new generation. What can we teach the refugee children, Afghan refugee children, some skill sets so they can be successful in our countries? What do you think that can be benefit them and us?
I think before we do that, Matilda, we need to teach our own children before the Afghan children arrive. And we need to teach our children to learn from the mistakes of the past.
Yeah.
War, it takes us backwards. It doesn't take us forwards. That's a myth, because when you unleash war, you unleash the dark side of human nature. You unleash injustice, rape, torture, abuse, all of those things. So we need to teach our children to find every way which is possible to maintain peace and only go to war when it's absolutely necessary. And when you do go to war, make sure you've got some solid ethics behind you and do war in a just way, because there is such a thing as just war. There is such a thing as righteous warfare. And so we have to teach the next generation of kids to know what that is. And it doesn't matter what country they come from, whether they're our kids from our countries, where we live, or their children that are coming in. It's the same principles.
Very good. Thank you, Carla.
I really like that statement, Carla, because when you think of it, I can't remember how many terrorists there was on the 9/11, but there's from many different countries. But we bombed a whole nation because of about 30 to 50 people. Now think about that. Think of how that really. A handful of people did some really bad things.
I'm sure Nelson and
but also, you know what? We do it because of fear. This whole narrative of we bomb them before they bomb us is a fear narrative. It's not a love narrative. And that's the issue. So if the next generation of kids is grown in a fear narrative, they're going to do even worse. So we have to teach them to look at things from the perspective of how do we love our fellow humans? And how do we keep peace in the world from love, not from fear? So, or they're coming to get us. If they're coming to get us, we're going to do all sorts, aren't we? In the name of keeping ourselves safe. And that's what we've been fed over the last 20 years. All of that was justified because they were going to be coming for us and coming for our children. And that narrative has to stop.
Very nice. Thank you, Carla.
There's time for war and there's time for peace. So.
Nelson, what do you have to say? I can see Nelson he's biting the bit. Come on, Nelson, come on.
So the first thing, I mean, let's just put kind of facts on the table. To me, I actually think the Al-Qaeda, right? We haven't mentioned those guys. See, we talked a lot about Taliban, where we got bamboozled by Taliban. Actually, it was Al-Qaeda that attacked the United States, and Al-Qaeda that was being given refuge in Afghanistan by the Taliban. The Taliban gave refuge to Al-Qaeda because they said, hey, you need a place to rest. You need a sanctuary. You should not, and you should not be using our country as a launching pad for operations against the West. Al-Qaeda did that unknowingly, and the Taliban unknowingly got dragged along with it because they didn't sign up for 9/11. That was purely Al-Qaeda. There were no Afghans involved in that. It was all Al-Qaeda. It was every country but Afghans. So Al-Qaeda was able to very smartly, in my opinion, bamboozle everyone else and drag the Taliban into something that they didn't sign up for. The Taliban they're staying inside Afghanistan. What even they agreed to be as Afghanistan. They're not going out of that, maybe Pakistan border to visit their cousin. So the U.S. went after Al-Qaeda. They just happened to be in Afghanistan. And the powers that be saw it, that they were able to find refuge there. Okay. They just found refuge there. And just like Carla was saying, went roughshod over the Taliban to get to Al-Qaeda. But Al-Qaeda, to me, was very smart. in being able to use the Taliban as almost like a covering force. And hey, you guys keep those guys busy. We're taking off, but they didn't sign up for that.
Very interesting information, Nelson.
I don't disagree with that, Nelson. I will say this: America's community been funding the IRA for many years, and they've been blowing us up. Should we have bombed you?
But hold on a second. So, and that's, but you know what? Okay, so is that the American community or is that a bunch of Irish Americans?
Either way, it's still Americans, and this is the same principle as what we're talking about.
Right.
Is my argument as someone who's actually participate in the whole war is when you really look at it, and I put my morals and ego aside, I put my morals up front and egos aside. At the end of the day, there's a handful of people who are bad, and we bombed the whole nation. And by that principle, we should have bombed America when you lot where your community, however many, was funding the IRA to blow us up. Mm-hmm. As we could go on with all different countries around the world. Does it really want invading a whole country, causing many deaths, pain and suffering on all sides? Mm-hmm. That's my only question. You don't have to answer that, but that's something food for thought for all of us in that respect.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. And I think we need to wrap it up, but I want to make sure that we're going to thank Akram Emar. It's your first time, I believe, in our show, and we are very delighted to see you. Your inputs were very important for our conversation. So please join us again. I want to say hello to Rachi Wakanda. Nice to have you back. And please tune us again next time. And this time with questions, Rachi. We would love to answer some questions or even ask your questions to our audience as well. And Sasha Serge Pakarian, thank you for supporting us. You're one of the biggest fans. And we love to have you all the time. And we love your thoughts as well. And yeah, that's it. If any of my co-hosts have anything to say, any thoughts? And
just the last point to the audience. Thank you again, but more importantly, if you do have any precious topics that's close to your heart that you want us to discuss, do not hesitate to email us on podcastersunleashed@gmail.com.
Very nice. Again, thank you, Sasha. Thank you, Akram. Thank you, Rachi. I hope
Wakanda forever. I've always wanted to say that. Wakanda forever.
And Carla, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I think if you say you're a Christian, live like a Christian. And if you say you're a Muslim, live like a Muslim. If you're a Jew, live like a Jew, and do it nicely. Treat your fellow humans with love and respect. And I think if we can all do that on an individual basis, maybe we can start to avoid some of these massive wars that cause such devastation, not just on an infrastructure level, but also on a humanity level.
Very good. And can you introduce your podcast and where we can find it?
My podcast is the Wonder and Wellbeing Podcast, and it's all about education and well-being, and it's for parents and educators of kids between the ages of 5 and 14 years old. And if we get at them at that age with the right principles, then maybe we can help them to grow up to be better human beings. Back to you, Matilda.
Beautiful. Victor, any last thoughts and introduce your podcast at the end?
Yeah, my last thought is let love lead, and war, except you're in the benefiting side, it's not good for humanity anyway. But you can find my podcast, Diaspora Entrepreneurs, on all major platforms. We are on YouTube, Spotify, all major platforms. So check us out.
Very good. Thank you very much, Nelson. Any last thoughts? Any last thoughts? And your podcast, please.
My last thought is with Afghanistan and the Taliban. I would say don't look at it too closely. Kind of take a step back. One, I'm sure that a lot of corruption is also trying to leave right now, because that's part of the settling of scores, right? When that president took off with all that money, there's some settling of scores, to include the U.S. just froze, I think, something like the Afghans, like national account. They just froze it. One, it stops giving it access to the Taliban, but I think even more importantly, it's another way to stop corruption. Okay, an additional way of stopping corruption. So a lot of those folks leaving, obviously I'm not talking about the interpreters and all that. Others are, they know that some scores are going to be settled. They were either going to go to jail in Afghanistan, but they were related to somebody or friends with someone. But now the Taliban, that's going to be a different animal. And I would venture to say there's going to be a power struggle within Afghanistan, because the two different Talibans, they've got, now they got the work of governance. They got to decide what's going to be the future of Afghanistan. And Sharia law, which has surprised me, Sharia law has a lot more to do with U.S. commercial law, which was a big shock to me, by the way. It's a lot similar to U.S. commercial law. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, the future of that country, that region of the world. My podcast is called Investing in America, where we talk about how to invest in U.S. real estate, and we have episodes where we interview very interesting people. One of the episodes I have lined up is Dr. H. Norman Wright, the man who wrote 101 Questions to Ask Before You Get Engaged or Remarried. Highly encourage this book. I'm actually going through it right now as we speak. And that is it. Over to you, Matilda, or over to you,
Awesome.
Carla.
Kavla, let's go. Any last thoughts? Very short and sweet, and then your podcast, please.
Yes, well, the short one is, what I understand is, really learn the history so you can understand the consequences of what we are having now. And it's very important to learn the history and know what's happened before. So my podcast is Women Stories Podcast. You can catch it on all podcast platforms, and tune in for a new episode this week. Over to you, Simon.
Oh, thank you, Carla. Hi, I'm Simon, Taxi Chronicles. As always, you step in my taxi, you give me an interview about your intimacy of life, your journey, your story, your career. We call it sharing a gift. I've got over 500 episodes, or 600 if I'm talking about what's in the bank. We post every day at 8 a.m. and it's a short, sweet listen, 5 to 20 minutes. Back to you, Matilda.
But Simon, any last thoughts?
Can't we all just get along? It would be nice if we could all just get along. Yeah. No one having to worry about religion or money and all the rest of it. Let's just get along. But fair, thanks to that. Thanks. Back to you, Matilda.
Thank you, guys. And I am just worried about all the Afghanis that they're displaced right now, or they're having a terrible time right now. My heart is with you guys. And my podcast is Coffee with Matilda, Journey to Self, and you can find it in all podcast platforms and YouTube and Facebook. Bye, guys. See you another Monday next week with another show. Ciao.
Bye.